Hi, I'm Dr. Jaime Romo. Welcome to Part 4 in Module 16. In the course, if you want to fly higher, you must be lighter. The focus of this module is self-knowledge. The focus of all the modules in Part 4 is this deeper sense of self. Self with a big S, not a little s. And as we've gone from maybe revisiting some of our old memories in the earlier parts, and in this module we're really clearly thinking about who we are as change agents, as people who are connected with our deeper self that have an impact on others by our presence, and how we can use that to help others in their journeys. I have a few thoughts about self. One is my dad. Actually, again, my dad. I do love my dad. Let's tell some dad stories. When I entered into the seminary, I was a zealot. I was this born again kind of spiritual being. I was a disembodied spiritual being, but I was really, really zealous and excited, and it was genuine. It was very much my experience that I only wanted more and more spiritual, and I was studying to be a priest. My dad's a simple guy, worked for the railroad his whole life, and didn't go to school, and I had gone to Stanford, and I was thinking that this was a great way to continue to be educated and so on. Anyway, he said, Jaime, I think it's okay if you want to be a priest, but don't take yourself so seriously. And I was mad at first. I thought, how could you, this is serious. This is something I'm passionate about. This is God talking to me to do good things. And really, there's some wisdom in that. There's a lot of wisdom in that. Because the self that I might take seriously now is really all about this deeper spiritual self. And I think the self maybe that I was more focused on was very spiritual then, but it was also very much about the small s, the me and my experience. And so there's an expression, don't take yourself so seriously, but take yourself with a big S very seriously. This whole idea of self-knowledge relates to the Joe Izzo study, his book, The 5 Secrets You Need to Know Before You Die. The first one being know who you are and why you're here. Follow your heart. The other ones he has are leave no regrets, live in the moment, become love, and give back. And so we'll talk about those maybe in other modules. But this is really an important piece. Who are we? Who do we think we are? And then at this deeper level, who is the self? Where is the spirit in us that is leading us from the inside out? Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Now, I think that's true. And then the first module is really related to a corollary of that if the unexamined life is not worth living, then the unexamined past is not worth having. And I would say that our past is very important because it connects us to our present, and that connects us to our future, and we're much more integrated and balanced. So it is really critical that we examine our past and other modules, and this one our present. Because if we don't really think critically about what we're doing and what we are really feeling called to do, what we're happiest doing, what empowers and blesses others by us doing it, and then we may be living someone else's life. And those were some of the words that Steve Jobs gave in that now famous Stanford graduation address. Don't live someone else's dogma. Find in you what you are called to do. So I have a few questions, related to that throughout this module. And some of them are, for example, am I following my heart? Am I being true to my life's purpose? Am I focused on the things that really matter to me? Am I being the person I really want to be? And at the end of this module, there's a video about game changers, and there have been plenty of extraordinary people, and some people in your own lives as well, who are extraordinary, but who followed their heart even though it wasn't practical, even though it didn't seem profitable, even though they faced great resistance and had to overcome great failure again and again and again. These people did things as a result that changed the lives of people around them in many ways, in ways of technology or ways of just influence, or ways of the way people governed. So individually, we have an incredible call to be this deepest self. So I hope you'll enjoy that. So whatever name you give this deepest self, if it's spirit or the higher power or whatever it is, this in you that is your core, that connects you to really everything around you. And that's what we're talking about. And one way a practical way to think about that in the day-to-day is just to chart, what you do every day. Whether it's by every 15 minutes or, just every kind of type of activity and over how much time you did that. And what that's helped me to do is to have a sense of, wow, did I get distracted, or was I doing things that I really didn't want to do and spent way much more time doing? How much of the stuff that I was doing was really got me, we talk about it, at the end of the day, a good tired as opposed to a bad tired. I've done a lot of things that I just feel exhausted, but I don't feel real happy about. Whereas other things I may feel real tired and they were real worth doing, and they cost a lot of time and energy. They're things that really were meaningful. So that's a practical way to start to think about, how are my actions letting me know? What experiences do I have? What am I liking? What am I learning from that is really helpful for me? Because if we don't do more of these things that are really connected to us, to our more of our core, or more of ourself, we can certainly end up being really bitter, or just being walking around with more and more resentment, or more and more disappointment in ourselves as well as with things around us. At this point, I would call myself a teacher. It's a core part of my identity. A wounded healer, which is a new part of my identity. And looking back, makes sense that all these different kind of unrelated types of activities, from going away to college and then going to the seminary and then starting to teach, that didn't seem really related, and then getting married and having kids and going to grad school and all that stuff, and then all of a sudden dealing with abuse issues. All these things, at the time didn't make sense. I thought I was going in one direction and then another. When I was a teacher, I had a godfather. My sister's godfather was an administrator in the LA Unified School District, and he said to me, Jaime, I've known you your whole life. You're really going to want to make a bigger impact on schools, on kids, and so I think you should think about being an administrator. Now, I had just come back a couple of years before from having a roots experience in Mexico. Lived in the jungles and lived in this community that was very, very powerful for me to reconnect with being Latino and language and community and culture. And I was a militant political activist living in a community of other militant educator activists. And I was, 22 or 3 or 4 or something. And I said to him, Eddie, I don't want to be a part of the system. I want to tear the system down. And I remember saying that with such enjoyment. This was really clear to me. And and then I became an administrator. I got my master's and I wore a tie and so on. And then as an administrator, someone said, as an assistant principal, one principal mentor of mine said, Jaime, you're really good. You're smart. You're passionate. I think you'd be a good superintendent. So I thought, she thinks I should be a superintendent. So I signed up for more graduate school and was working. Didn't become a superintendent, but ended up teaching teachers. But all these things were great. But they really weren't my idea. There was somebody else saying, this could work for you. This could be good. And now I find myself, after having gone through kind of traumatic process of dealing with past abuse issues and all of the internalized stuff that is clearer for me and how it affects me and so on, and really then taking a much more connected, integrated spiritual path, I see all those things do make sense. But now this is more directed from the inside out. Being a teacher, being a wounded healer, being someone who's looking to promote healing and help end abuse everywhere, and to reach out to more and more people from more and more traditions to deal with this very difficult subject. Creating new materials, creating resources for parents, for survivors, for lots of people. This is now coming from the inside out. So no one is saying to me, hey, you should do this. So that's the difference of knowing ourselves. This is one way of thinking about the self-knowledge and letting it direct us is destiny. And I don't mean like manifest destiny, that guided people to take land and push people away in the name of having more because they thought that was what somehow God was directing for them. And I don't mean destino some people might think in Latino backgrounds that it's a very passive kind of victimized life, just whatever bad things happen, that must have been what was meant to be. I mean destiny and destino as Michelangelo thought about creating something from granite. He looked into it and chipped away at what wasn't in it to begin with, what wanted to come out. And so one way for me to be more in touch with what's inside and wants to come out is meditation. And we'll talk a little bit more in the future. We talked about that practical meditation in the past, part 3. There are lots of ways that we need to stay connected and expand our sense of self. And being a contemplative person, being a person who has a grounding practice, helps us to, I think, deal with anxiety better. And so one consequence of getting in touch with our deeper self, I think, is being more in touch with the unknown. And in an earlier module we talked about the great decay, that we don't know what we don't know, and that's a huge amount of our unconscious and a huge amount of the life around us. So this is the two sides of a coin. The more sense of self we have, I think the more expansive we become, and then we have to deal with more uncertainty. And so think of heroes, Mandela, Rigoberta Menchú, Bishop Tutu, people who have faced incredible challenges, faced death, and following their suffering, they've had this deep transformation. And there's a saying, I'll read it, it's from Arthur Clarke. He says, "It may be that our role in this planet is not to worship God, but to create Him." And so when people, I think, get a sense of who they are, who they're called to be, and that leads them through incredible struggle, and in fact, a lot of the struggle can clarify this deeper sense of who we are, that we become these co-creators. We see God in a much different way. We see ourselves in a much different way. That it's not just things happening to us, but it's us in that, like Michelangelo's granite, wanting to come out. So let me ask you just a few questions, and I'll read you some wisdom words from Walter Russell. A few questions. What is the gift that you currently hold in exile? Another question. What forgiveness are you withholding? Another question. What is a commitment or decision that you've changed your mind about? Another. What is the positive feedback that you receive that still surprises you? Another. What are the crossroads you face at this time? And finally, what declarations are you prepared to make about the possibilities of the future? So these are all ways for us to start to think, sort through what is the stuff that we really care about, what counts for us, what's important. Walter Russell says, there's nothing the greatest genius in the world can do that you cannot do. You have the same inheritance that he has. The only reason why you have not given evidence of it is because you're not yet been made aware of it. In other words, you have not yet discovered yourself, with a big S. And the greatest miracle that can happen to you is that wonderful discovery of yourself, again the big S, the divine power which lies within yourself, and the unlimited knowledge which you unknowingly have, which you could never acquire from books or universities in 1,000 years. So, visit the chat room, activities. I'll see you in the next module.